Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Strong, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a delegate from Ontario, Canada. 2 years ago, I presented a seminar at US Nationals, and this video is a re-recording of that presentation. The recordings of the original seminar didn't turn out great, and I have updates anyway, so here's my updated version of the gender disparity, why cubing is male-dominated, and what we can do to best support underrepresented populations. If we search the definition of disparity, it's a difference in level of treatment, especially one that is seen as unfair. I wouldn't read too much into that exact definition. I mainly chose the word disparity because it has parity in it. So this disparity that I'm referring to is the noticeable difference in the number of female cubers who compete at competitions and how fast they are compared to everyone else. Disclaimer, in order to cover all the topics I want to talk about, it was not possible to make this G-rated. PG is the best I could do. When I was looking at different rating systems, I learned that PG movies are allowed to have one swear word. And yes, I will be using that opportunity, but you'll know exactly when it's coming because I will say part of my language before I actually say it. One thing I want you to know is that there is zero evidence to support that males are naturally more intelligent than females. The reason I'm saying this now is because of a phenomenon called confirmation bias. This is people's tendency to look for information that aligns with their existing beliefs. It's the idea of starting with a conclusion and looking for facts to support it, instead of gathering facts and seeing where it leads you. If you believe that there is some sort of innate biological advantage for males when it comes to intelligence, you might misunderstand some of the data I'll be sharing. That's why I'm sharing this now. So to start off, I'll be sharing some gender-based stats that I generated from the WCA database. I used the gender data from WCA profiles, and everything should be up to date as of June 2025, which is when I downloaded the export. First, here's a graph showing the percentage of new competitors every year who are female. We can see the percentage of female competitors is fairly consistent, but it does fluctuate a bit. The percentage has been around 8 and 12% since 2007, and that's easy to remember because 8 seconds, 12 seconds. The overall rate across all years is 10.01%, and when I presented this 2 years ago, it was sub 10 at 9.8%, so it has improved over the last 2 years. The percentage of delegates who are female is currently 11.8%, which is higher than the overall 10%. I think that's really good news because it suggests that there isn't a lot of discrimination when it comes to nominating delegates, and there is interest among females to become delegates. 2 years ago, the percent was 10.7%, so it has increased a bit in the last 2 years. If we look at the percentage of committee and team members who are female, we see it's even higher than the percentage of female delegates. It's almost 17%. I think that says a lot about the inclusive nature of our community. There is a lot of interest among females who want to contribute to the WCA, and I think that says a lot about what we're doing. So next, I was interested in knowing how frequently we have competitions with a low rate of female competitors and what kind of consequences they have. So unfortunately, we have had almost 1,500 competitions with 0 females, around 10% of all competitions. 2 years ago, this percentage was 6.6, so it did get worse, and the largest had 122 competitors. Now for ones that had 1 female, it's almost 1,900, and it's around 13% of all competitions, and the percentage 2 years ago was 10%. The largest one had 144 competitors. So I looked into who are these females who are competing as the lone female at their competition. I found out that most of them were not first-timers, and a lot of them have competed multiple times, even if they are some of the few females at their competitions. All right, overall retention rates. This is referring to the percentage of competitors who have competed more than once. So for males, it's 47.8%, and females, it's 41.8%. 2 years ago, it was 38.9% for females, so it has gone up. So now people who have competed the most overall, so here are the top 15 competitors who have competed in the most competitions. There are 4 people who have competed in 300 or more competitions. Now, if you look at female competitors only, there are only 29 of us who have been to 100 or more competition. Katie Hall has competed the most out of all female competitors with almost 250 competitions. And last year she passed Maria Wee, and she had this stat for many, many years. All right, lastly, I looked at the most popular events. I wasn't really expecting anything surprising here, but something did surprise me. So first, here are the most popular events for everyone. We have 3, 2, Pira, 4, OH, and Scube. Not that surprising. So now if we look at females only, 3, 2, Pira, Scube. Why is Scube popular among females. So when I asked this out loud during my seminar, someone yelled, "You!" And I think they're correct. So the reason is that I invented the most popular cube method. It's called Sarah's cube method. Very original, I know. So I think I unintentionally made cube more appealing for females compared to other events. All right, so after seeing the stats, I had some questions and I wanted answers. So first, why are there significantly fewer females cubing in the first place? And second, why are female cubers competing at fewer competition and in fewer events? Part 2 is the research. I'll be sharing some theories that answer these questions. So I did a lot of reading. I wanted to learn as much as I could about the psychology and neuroscience of gender. And you know I'm the one that took this picture because that is my cube over there with my color scheme. I have purple on all my puzzles. So let's start with some misinformation. So here's a paper from 100 years ago. It's called On the Psychological Mental Deficiency of Women. Yikes. So the main argument in this article is that men's brains are larger on average than women's. Therefore, men are naturally just more intellectually superior than women. So if you didn't know, the brain is the most complex organ in the human body, and it does a lot more than just let you think. You can't just measure intelligence by the mass of your brain. So fortunately, a lot of these claims have been debunked using modern brain imaging technology, but unfortunately this information is still widespread and it still affects people's perception of women. So next I'm going to share some actual gender differences from modern research. This quote is from a book written by a math education researcher. So this person visited a lot of classrooms throughout the US and the UK to get this data. It says 91% of girls choose understanding as the most important aspect of learning math, compared to only 65% of boys. The rest of the boys said that memorization of the rules was most important. So this quote reminded me of cubing because the way that many of us learn to solve the cube is through rote memorization. Most online tutorials just tell you what to do without giving any explanation as to why the algorithms work, and that's the same way that math classes have traditionally been. So here's a quote from another book. For many tasks, brain imaging studies show that women use the most advanced areas of the brain, whereas men doing the same task use more primitive areas of the brain. So this suggests that men typically prefer rote memory whenever possible, whereas women prefer understanding whenever possible. So based on this information, I think it's reasonable to conclude that the way most online tutorials work are unintentionally more appealing to males. Now, this doesn't mean that females can't learn from online tutorials. It just means that it's harder because we're distracted by why these algorithms work, and these tutorials won't give us those answers. And that affects our confidence in our abilities and our motivation to move forward. Here's one more quote. So researchers have found that females and males use fundamentally different strategies in navigation. Women typically navigate using landmarks. Men are more likely to use absolute direction or absolute distances. This gender difference in navigation is well established by 5 years of age. So again, this made me think more about the notation we use, which is absolute. And again, I'm not implying that females can't learn notation. It's just not as appealing as learning through pictures. So here's an example of how to show an algorithm without notation. This is a soon. So this approach reduces cognitive load over standard notation, and it also makes it clear why this works. You can visually see it takes out an F2L pair and puts it back in differently. So last year, I made a web-based tutorial that incorporates everything I just talked about and more. I spent several months on this project, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. I also wrote an essay on why this is an excellent tutorial, and I submitted it for a course in my master's program. This essay is available on my website here. So if you know someone who wants to know how to solve the cube, please consider passing along this tutorial. You might be surprised with how good it is. All right, so back to research. Here's the last quote I'm going to show. So boys systematically overestimate their own abilities, whereas girls are more likely to underestimate their abilities. So I just paused there to give you a brief moment to think about this quote. And depending on your own implicit bias about gender, you might have focused more on the first half or the second half of this sentence. Here's the context behind this quote. It's in a book, and the section is on risk assessment. It's about why boys have a greater tendency to do physically dangerous things that can result in injury or death, especially under peer pressure. So under that context, where this quote is from, it's clear that underestimating your own abilities has these downsides. But if we think about cubing, it's the other way around. Overestimating keeps you motivated, underestimating does the opposite. All right, so here is a discussion paper from 2021. It's written by 3 cubers who used the WCA database to analyze the results of competitors who competed in 3x3. They focused on proving or disproving that female competitors who don't make the second rounds are likely to stop competing over males who don't make second round. And they found this is actually not true at all in North America and Europe, but it is true for other countries with larger gender gaps in labor market outcomes. In other words, it just depends on how women are treated in that country. All right, part 3 is basically a shout-out section for things the WCA is doing well as local communities, regarding equity and inclusion. So here's a throwback to the WCA regulations from 2014. It says, when the judge believes the competitor is ready, he asks, ready. The competitor must be ready to start the attempt within 1 minute of being called, else he forfeits his attempt at the discretion of the judge. So why did I pick this regulation? That's why. So in 2014 and earlier, the regulations used he, him pronouns for the competitor, the judge, scramblers, and other officials. It did explain that it's simply for readability, because it's messy to write he or she everywhere. And it wasn't until 2015 the WCA started to switch to just referring to everyone as singular they. So the regulations, policies, documents, websites, and software apps by the WCA now all use singular they, which is nice and inclusive. So the vast majority of linguists agree that it is grammatically correct to use a singular they, but there is a vocal minority that disagrees. So using they as both a singular and a plural has actually been around longer than the pronoun you has been around as a singular and plural. People used to use the and they to distinguish between plural you and singular you. So singular they has been around longer than the word you. So if you speak English as a native language, the singular they is actually already in your grammar. You don't have to learn any new grammar, just new context to apply that to. For example, the sentence, competitors need to check what their judge wrote before signing the scorecard. That sounds grammatically correct, and it is. But the sentence, Sam is going to the first competition and they are excited about it. That might throw you off because you might be wondering what Sam stands for. Is it Samantha, a she, or is it Samuel, a he? And once you know which one it is, it might be tempting to just use that instead. So this is where the new learning is. So inclusive language is basically referring to everyone as they until you actually know their pronouns, even if you know their gender. The other thing is that some people use they, them as their exclusive pronouns. They don't use he or she, just they. And by the way, there's a dog in my neighborhood named Sam, and it's short for sandwich. All right, another thing the WCA is doing well is that there are 3 gender options for WCA profile. And this third option is important because there are competitors who don't want to disclose their gender, and there are also competitors who identify as non-binary, meaning they are neither female nor male. So competitors who select other, so it doesn't show their gender on their profile, it's just blank. And the reason why I didn't include other in stats earlier is because there are 2 reasons why people select other, and it doesn't make sense to lump them together. All right, so I've talked to people who have selected other as their gender marker, and there are 2 categories. There are people who are openly non-binary, and they do want this information, they want non-binary showing on their profile, and there are also people who select it because they just don't want any gender to show up at all. They want it to be blank. I've also noticed that there are around 400 people whose gender has never been collected, and so it's just considered null. And there are also competitors who have been anonymized, and their gender defaults to other instead of null. Here's my solution instead. It should result in more accurate data. But since identified as female, I don't want to formally propose this to the WCA until we get feedback from people who would select the last 2 options. So if that is you, please reach out to me and we can have a chat to see what we can do.